Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Nick Ayres, Director of Social Marketing for IHG.
Good morning. That was kind of weak. Good morning. Thank you. I know it's the last day of Vegas. I've been here far too long myself, but we are in the home stretch. So thanks so much for joining us this morning. We appreciate you taking your time. After the Eric session this morning, I hope all of you all got a chance to hear that as well. Did you guys enjoy Eric's session? Were you there for that? Yeah. I unfortunately didn't get a chance to see him today, but have seen him in the past. He's incredibly inspirational, just a great message, and hopefully you guys have taken a lot from that. So we will do our best to compete with that and hopefully give you some nuggets to take away as well. As the voice of God mentioned, I am Nick Ayres. I lead the global social marketing team here at IHG. And it's my privilege to host this session titled From Reputation Management to Reputation Selling, Making Social Work for You. I'm pleased to host a panel of your peers and some industry experts as we talk through how we make social work and work hard for your business and not just something that we do on the side. Hopefully you've had a good week in Vegas. I know I've had a good week in Vegas, and it's lots of great sessions, some good parties last night, as well as some time on the Strip. And hopefully, perhaps most importantly, you've been able to keep what happens in Vegas here in Vegas, rather than post it all over Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and YouTube and Pinterest and all of the other places. I haven't been so lucky, unfortunately. Some of my activity, I guess, as the social guy, it ends up on places like Facebook, and so that has happened a little bit. Not too much, though, mostly just really calm, serene pictures of me having dinner with my wife. Although I will say, Vegas is probably the only place that you will find a social guy wearing a suit and a tie standing on stage, so it's taken a little bit of time to get used to that. All kidding aside, Vegas really is a microcosm of what I think we all experience day in and day out in our lives, which is the role that social media and social marketing as business executives and professionals have taken on in our DNA and our day-to-day activities. I don't think there's any doubt that social is an integral part of the ways our customers live their lives, and most practically for us here today, how they plan their travel routines. Again, I don't think there would be any argument that as hospitality professionals, guest reviews from places like the IHG guest ratings and reviews, or TripAdvisor, or even Facebook, really are the dominant force in the decision calculus of our guests today. They're reading the reviews, they're looking at the comments, they're looking at the ratings, and that is what is determining whether they will walk through your front door and decide to stay with you or decide to stay with your competitor. And quite frankly, it is possible that sites like Facebook and Twitter, and yes, even TripAdvisor, might go the way of the dodo bird, though I wouldn't hold your breath for that. What is undoubtedly here to stay is that our guests are in this sort of mindset of a sharing behavior or a sharing economy, where they are going to share every single detail of their stay at your hotels, not just with their friends and family, but with hundreds and maybe even thousands of folks who will read those. So whether it's a good experience, a bad experience, a mundane experience, all of that is being shared. And I think the pivot that we've seen most recently is that customers now expect that we as owners and operators are there and that we're listening, and more importantly, that we are at the ready to respond to their feedback in real time. So it's no longer just about listening and noticing it for our internal teams. It's about being there and ready to respond for our hoteliers. And customers expect that of us today as we move into the 21st century. And as you heard Keith talk about from the main stage on Monday, social listening from our perspective really is no longer optional. It is an imperative part of the way that we manage our business as we move forward. So at IHG, thankfully, this is not anything new. It's something that we've been focused on for some time. And if you've been to conference in the past or you've participated in any of our training sessions, you've heard us talk about the importance of listening and reputation management. And as part of that, we listen to your feedback as well to help understand how we can help you do your jobs better and to be more efficient in doing so. And so with that in mind, I was excited in July that we were able to relaunch the IHG Social Listening tool to provide you a better tool to help you more efficiently and more effectively manage all of your reviews from a single location. It really is that one-stop shop for you to be able to manage TripAdvisor, IHG guest reviews, Expedia, Facebook, Twitter, and many, many other sites. But we didn't want to stop there, right? This is a message that you've heard from us a lot. We don't want to just stop with responding to reviews, but really wanted to drill in to how we're making this interesting in terms of operations. And I was really excited to hear Oliver talk about this from Main Stage on Monday as well. And the analogy that he gave of the mobile application and the ways that our businesses have been transformed into the same sort of cycles that mobile applications now have. He said that consumers expect our products, our hotels, to be perpetually improved. And importantly, that our guests and our potential guests want to provide input and they want to provide feedback. So while that was an unplanned segue for us, it is a great segue to talk about how we can take the operational insights from social media and drive that into our business. As we talk about at IHG, we mention it as active social listening, active reputation management, or as the title of this session suggests, reputation selling. Put simply, how do we leverage feedback, and how do you leverage feedback to drive operational change on a perpetual basis? Not just responding to reviews, but really making it actionable. So, enough from me. With that said, I'd love to introduce my panel as we dig into some practical examples of how we are able to do this. In fact, we had some perpetual change ourselves before this. We have new seating. We're no longer in couches, which is a good thing for us. And so we're going to introduce the team to you today. We're going to talk through some of how we can really drive some operational change. So immediately to my left is David Attardi. David is the vice president at BF Saul's Hospitality Group and is an active member of the IHG Owners Association. David is a two-time panelist for social media due to his passion, his strong beliefs in driving results, and his sock selection, for those of you who can see. He is the master of all. Exactly. Yeah, give it up for the socks. So we're all about that. David's role at BF Saul includes not just their online marketing activities, but their offline marketing activities as well, to be sure that customers can find BF Saul hotels across all of their relevant touch points. So David, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Next to David, we have Mark Hayward. Mark is a consulting specialist in social media strategy and reputation, and he is actually a former hotel owner himself. He was successfully able to leverage social media, not only to drive an unending wave of customers through his doors, but also to attract a good deal of traditional media coverage as well, which is always exciting. Mark has worked with recognizable names such as TripAdvisor and more recently American Express as well. So Mark, thanks for joining us. And last but certainly not least, we have Nabil, who's joining us on the end, Nabil Ghanem. Nabil joined First Call Hospitality in 2007 and is presently serving as the general manager of Keith's favorite hotel, which is the Holiday Inn Perimeter location in Atlanta, so that's always exciting. He began his hotel career with Marriott in 1982 as an executive chef, and he has held many management positions since then. Nabil believes strongly in the power of social marketing and is an active reader and responder to IHG guest ratings and reviews, and uses the social listening tool, which is spectacular. So, guys, thanks for joining us here today. I appreciate you having a seat with us up on stage as we have this conversation. So, as we get into it, I don't think anyone would argue that social has really transformed the way we think about managing our business moving forward. But I thought it would be fun to provide a few examples of how that might have played out in the worlds that you guys are involved in. So, Mark, let's start with you. Can you give a couple examples? Maybe we'll start with a positive example first and then maybe a negative one of how a business has used social or seen social impact their business dramatically.
Sure. Good morning, everyone. I hope you're having a fantastic day so far. For the Red Sox fans out there, I know you're having a great day because I'm pretty certain they're going to clinch the World Series this evening. Yes, for the first time since 1918 at home. Our social media success story today most certainly did not start off that way. The San Juan Water and Beach Club in Puerto Rico was actually on the brink of bankruptcy, and they were considering closing their doors for good. Of the 149 or so hotels that are ranked on TripAdvisor for Puerto Rico, at their lowest, they were down around number 100. And as we all know in this room, if you are marketing yourself as a boutique property, or any type of property for that matter, you do not want to consistently be seeing reviews that say things like motel quality, not really nice, and then the real killer, look elsewhere, which tends to drive a lot of business to your competition. However, instead of shutting their doors, they decided to regroup and own their reputation, and they took the negative insight that was about them online, and they used it to drive real action for improvement. And when they were in their discovery phase, they noticed guests were saying three common things. The rooms were often not clean and dirty, the staff were not well trained, and so they decided to take the input, and they came up with a new mission for the property that's focused on remarkable guest experience, a commitment to a well-maintained property, and ongoing training for all staff so that they could provide that amazing experience. And in the past 11 months, they've really made a remarkable transformation. They're now #1 for their specific area in San Juan. Their restaurant, which was ranked dead last, is now #1. And the general manager tells me that by 2014, they hope to be the #1 hotel in all of Puerto Rico, which is really incredible. And perhaps most importantly, when it comes to finances and booking, they now have the highest occupancy rate of any hotel in San Juan, and they're also able to charge the highest rate for their track class. So pretty amazing stuff that proves it's not impossible and that it can be done.
Yeah, no, that's great to see real dollars and cents examples of how social has impacted their business. So again, I know we're in Vegas. I will admit I'm one to not be able to turn away from train wrecks when I see them happen in social media. And maybe that happens more often than not. I know that we saw the United Breaks Guitars example earlier in the main sessions, but I'd love to hear maybe another example of maybe a brand that hasn't done so well recently and some of the impact that social has had, not just on their online reputation, but on their real business.
Sure. Some of you might be familiar with the fallout from Air Canada recently. They had a situation that was not very positive. They were tasked with flying Larry, yet Larry the female dog, from California, where her owner had unfortunately passed away, and she was heading to her new family in Canada. During the transition, one of Air Canada's employees let Larry out, and she took off, and unfortunately, they never found her. But when the director of public relations was contacted for further comment, he sort of dismissively and mockingly stated that the US government is shut down and they're about to go into default, and this is what its media cares about, a lost dog. So that did not go over too well, and of course his words went viral very quickly and were picked up by most media channels. And when you think about the fact that in the US alone, 56 million homes have a dog as a pet, a lot of those folks are now going to think about Air Canada as the airline that does not necessarily care about maybe one of the most important members of their family when they're going to book travel. And of course, the message was amplified on Facebook and particularly on Twitter. Folks with many followers were tweeting things like, "Thanks to Peter Fitzpatrick, Director of Public Relations, I will not be flying Air Canada anymore." And one particularly comedic gentleman with over 140,000 followers tweeted, "If you fly Air Canada, you have to pay extra for the I don't give a bleep option about your dog, but it's totally worth it." So those aren't comments you really want associated with your brand online.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And we were joking earlier, I'm not really a dog person. Sorry for all of you dog people out there. But I don't think that I would make that comment either. I think that's just a recipe for disaster. So it's an unfortunate, bad example, but I think a good one for the audience today to talk through how it's really playing out. So again, great examples that illustrate the power of social on our business. Hopefully none of you in the audience have bad examples that are near that dramatic, but I don't think it's any stretch to say it has an impact on our business. But it's also not the only thing that has an impact on our business. And I know one of the things that we've heard as we've rolled out the IHG social listening tool and as we talk to hoteliers is that it's tough to find the bandwidth to find a way to manage social media and social marketing as a part of what we're doing for business today. So I'd love to hear a little bit from our operational experts. Like, how have you all been able to move from, again, this is something we might think about, to really making it an imperative? So Nabil, could you talk a little bit about how your staff has really moved from, impossible to manage to this is something imperative that we have to do every day?
Thank you. When First Call Hospitality took over the property, it was just 250-room hotel. We were close to dead last in Atlanta market. And, there's a few things we couldn't do anything about it. The location, we were off the beaten path. But our reputation was not as stellar as it should have been. So we all knew that no matter how much money you invest in renovation and product, that's just one way to get you closer to where you want to be. Now you have to really invest a lot into the training of the team and the management and do the buy-in from the staff and the manager to be able to accommodate or kind of work hand in hand with your renovation to be able to drive business back to you. And that's not it. You can't stop there. Now you have to manage your reputation. So knowing what we knew then, we know where we wanted to go. We definitely hired the right individual for the right positions. That was really a key for us. Hire people for their passion to be successful and to be tops in that market. So the second thing, we took tremendous ownership of the process itself and our marketing and reputation for all the feedback coming to us. We really took to heart every comment, every guest comment came to us from any channel. I mean, obviously now it made it tremendously easier to go to IHG social listening tool to be able to go and respond immediately to all comments. But what we did, we responded to the positive and the negative with the same passion, the same love, and the same, gratitude for those individuals who actually wrote that comments. And we made some commitment and promises. But those promises we shared with our team. In our stand-up meeting, everybody knew where we ranked and what we planned to do about the negative or the positive and how we respond to them. So we created a little bit more enthusiasm from our team to be successful. And that obviously took us from 169 out of 196 to number 1 in Atlanta for 8 consecutive months. It's so nice to be in number 1 and the 4th season come in and try to find out what are you doing different. It's great to see the Marriott come in to see where did they go wrong. And actually literally have a meeting with you. So, okay, what do you think we need to do different? It's great, even better, when you start calculating your revenue or your repeat guest or your transient business see increase by 18 or 20% because of the online reputation and how you manage it and take ownership of it. And I tell you, it was a great gate for us to be successful. Even groups that, you walk in and tell you, yes, we heard this is what you did or how you responded. And we were very, very successful managing that process.
Yeah, no, that is awesome to hear. Again, it sort of translate from a somewhat ethereal, right, managing your reputation to going from, the 170s to number 1. And hopefully you didn't give the 4 seasons, too much good advice. Yeah. But it's nice of you to open your doors and be hospitable for sure. So, David, how about you? Could you talk a little bit about how, across your portfolio, how have you really thought about, again, this sort of idea of getting your staff to take ownership and really moving from, hey, this is a nice thing that we'll do when we have time, to something that is imperative for them to do day in and day out.
First, I want to go back to your favorite topic, my socks, because I think
I can't compete today.
This just dawned on me that this is a free pair of socks that I got from I was on some website, hotsocks.com or something like this, buying socks for a wedding party that I was in for all of the groomsmen, and I bought like 6 pairs, and they said, if you like us on Facebook, we'll send you 2 pairs of free socks. So I liked them on Facebook, and with my order, I got 2 pairs of free socks.
That's awesome. I just want to meet the groom that sent you to a website to buy socks for your tux. Like, come on now. I mean, it's a tux.
I thought you were going to say his wife.
That's a conversation. It's a good cocktail conversation.
So anyway, it just dawned on me.
Yeah,
so
no, that's
sorry.
good. Hot socks? Hot socks.
I'll get you the website.
I joke, but my phone's on the floor, but that's where I'm going next.
No, for us, you talk about trying to manage the time commitment that can be involved with social media monitoring and online reputation monitoring, and how do we do that in a way that is within the context of the amount of bandwidth and how big our plates are. For us, as we look across our portfolio of 19 hotels, we have a lot of really savvy and engaged GMs like Nabil that understand very naturally and inherently how important it is. And some that maybe don't necessarily raise to that level of awareness. So what we had to do was sort of collectively heighten our consciousness around the importance of social media. And it's very simple. I mean, this is the voice of the guest for us. We look at online ratings and reviews and guest feedback in the same light that we would look at heartbeat surveys and guest satisfaction scores from post-stay surveys. And in fact, we have built a relatively balanced scorecard that sort of includes all of those different metrics, all of those scores, and all of that feedback into one dashboard that is a part now. It's a kind of a part of the fabric of our general manager's performance evaluation. So now not only is it the level of awareness and consciousness is heightened to, it's tied to performance evaluation and to how they're incentivized. So it's something that we had to do sort of systemically to get to that place for those that it wasn't very natural to get there. And but in terms of the practicality of how do you manage your time and do this with the limited amount of bandwidth you have, we try to leverage the functionality within the tools that we use. Primarily, I think a good example is the IHG listening tool around just the ability to search via keywords, search via sentiment, so you can pick up on themes and trends that are happening in your hotel, as well as if you look at it at above property level, thematically across a portfolio. So that otherwise it's trying to drink through a fire hose, as they say. There's just so much stuff. The tools sort of help you, and that particular tool and that functionality, I think, helps you make it a little more digestible.
Awesome. Yeah. I know, I want to drill into a little bit the discussion of incentives, right? And I know we've had a little bit of this sort of offstage conversation. Have you guys seen other, frankly, monetary or not, other interesting things that hoteliers have done to really rally their staff around the idea of taking ownership? And I know, Mark, you mentioned one from a hotel in New York in particular.
Yeah, absolutely. The District Hotel in New York City, which we all know is an extremely competitive marketplace, in order to get buy-in from their staff and to get folks rallied around reputation optimization, because it is so important, they painted a funny board by staff lockers with really cute emoticons and emojis that shows their status on TripAdvisor and a couple of other ranking sites that they're active on. And the general manager told me as soon as they put that board up, staff immediately gained a new interest on sort of where they stood and what people were saying about them online, to the point where they now come in, they have a look to see where they are, and then they head out and they do their work. And before they sat comfortably outside of the top 10 for New York City, and they're now they've moved up to number 7, so pretty remarkable.
There's one thing we really didn't mention on, and we talked a little bit, and we mentioned a lot about the general manager. You know what? I have to give the sales team tremendous credit, because the sales team start taking tremendous ownership in that process. And you kidding, it was another avenue for them to promote that and get more sales. I mean, when we started slipping, they came back, hey, what we need to do to get back. It was a great opportunity for the sales team to go back. Your head held high, hey, we're number 1, or we moving in number 10, or here's what we did. And it was awesome for them. They felt another avenue for them to do sales.
Yeah. And nothing, to Mark's point, there's nothing, in my opinion, more transparent than the internet, right? And so that's a very natural platform for visibility and competition. So I think, this sort of back of house war board, so to speak, around who's getting comments talked about them applies to a portfolio of hotels the same way. And that's an angle that we've noticed and that we've taken across our hotel in making visible and putting on display guest rating and review scores and feedback across a portfolio. There's a very natural and healthy sense of competition, I think, across the portfolio, where now it's visible. So not only do you want to have a call out for providing great guest service to our guests and the interaction with them, but you want to beat your sister hotel down the street, and I think that just adds a little fuel to the fire of our collective heightened awareness of it.
Yeah, I love the idea of emoticons as incentives. Like, I mean, come on now. Like, how much easier does it get than that? So
but also what we did, we took it a little bit farther. We have an incentive for individuals. If their name gets mentioned, they get $5. And you'll be surprised how much, those that servers start making a point to go to take care of that guest, be sure it's taken care of, be sure her name is there, be sure that she passed on that TripAdvisor. You'll be surprised how many people out there, they want to write something positive, but they don't know how to get there. Have the availability of the tools. We have a business card available that they could just hand it to them and have them, how to get there and what you do, and then it's up to them to write it. But you'll be surprised how many people, they want to do the right thing, and they want to write a positive thing. Obviously, the people who don't want to write positive things, they'll find a way. Yeah. We all know that. But it's, this is actually the ownership and the mindset of we have to own it. Not just us as a manager, it's the whole team, from your manager to your staff to all the associates around, have to own the process to be successful at it.
Absolutely. And we've had a lot of good points, but I think thematically, it's been interesting to hear you talk about the evolution of thinking about social in a silo and just thinking about, IHG guest reviews as a single channel that doesn't impact any other piece of the business, to really start to think a little bit more broadly about the role that social plays. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about maybe some examples of how that sort of operational insight has really played out tactically for you, whether it's short or long-term planning. So Mark, maybe we start with you and maybe an example or two that you have.
Sure. When I used to own my hotel, we had an online listening strategy that we followed every day. And of course, we paid really strong attention to negative reviews. And when we responded, we always made sure it was in a human tone and with tremendous empathy to assuage maybe the guest that didn't have a perfect experience. But we also were cognizant of the fact that people who may potentially book with us were reading our responses to see if we really care about guest experience. But we also paid really close attention to positive sentiment and comments about us online. We found we could find a lot of information that we could use as insight to drive improvement. For example, someone may have had a 5-star stay with us, but maybe they just mentioned the lighting was off or check-in didn't go in as well as it possibly could have. So we were able to capture that information and provide real action. Even though it wasn't an issue for that guest, we could take care of it before maybe it was going to be a problem for a future guest.
Yeah, and I think that's great. And I think what we've seen across our portfolio is very rarely do you see a review that simply has a single sentiment or talks about a single thing. There tend to be lots of both good and sometimes bad that are talked about. So I think that's a great insight to take away. David, how about you all in terms of planning and tactics, how you thought about it?
Right. We look at, first of all, the feedback in this space is unbelievably rich, right? So, and we look at it both what I would call tactically and strategically. Tactically meaning the day-to-day operation of your hotel and what people are saying about it and how that operation it works great and how it could be improved and then acting on it. So there's a lot of things that on a day-to-day basis, whether that be the service and the schedule of your shuttle runs to the airport or the local area or your breakfast offerings or whatever. There's that happens every day and should happen every day at the property level. Another way that we look at it is sort of to Nabil's point earlier about it being a sales activity is that it amazes me what people will share in an online review. And if you pay attention, you can pick up on a lot of stuff on your own hotel, obviously, but if you pay attention to your competitive hotels, you can get a lot of insight around who's staying in those hotels and what makes them happy or what doesn't make them happy.
Yep.
And if you're savvy enough to pick up on that and you can action on it. And so if you know there's a group that you're trying to get that's across the street and there's feedback around what they're frustrated about this past year, maybe it was an annual event, and then next year that's something that you could direct, that you could talk to specifically. So I think there's a lot of competitive insight that can be gleaned out of the reviews. But then for us, that's sort of the tactical way that we use it, but we also look at it strategically at a portfolio level. And a good example of that is seeing, again, themes and trends across reviews, across hotels and regions that of what people are saying thematically, and then that way we can sometimes, that'll inform how and where we spend our capital dollars. And a great example of that is this past year with our kind of enhanced commitment to fitness centers. We've got a lot of feedback around fitness centers and people's commitment to their own health and wellness as they travel. And we've done a handful of pretty significant fitness center renovations across our portfolio, totaling over about $500,000 in renovations and improvements and new equipment. So that's the way that, again, we look at it at a little bit of a higher level, but everybody's involved with monitoring and picking up on insights.
Yeah, no, it's great to think about using, again, those insights that you get from guests to really drive where you invest from a capital perspective. Nabil, how about you? Any other insights you'd add?
Well, I think that a lot of time also we don't really give a lot of credit to the front desk. The front desk is the bloodline for the hotels. If you listen closely and you listen carefully, they'll tell you what they're hearing from the guests, and they'll tell you what the guest's looking at, or what you need to do different to be able to make everybody happy. But more important, getting them involved, what are you doing when you answer? What are you doing when you respond to the guests? And let them know that we really heard what the guest's saying and follow up and follow through. Our commitment can't be short-sighted. We all need to understand this is not going away. That's for real, definitely. And if you look at the competitor and see what they're facing consistently, you have a tremendous edge if you respond. We do it a little bit different. I know everybody have their own way. we really choose to respond to every guest. I personally feel that if the guest invests the time in writing good or bad comments, you need to invest the time in responding. We train in the staff to understand that you only have one opportunity, and this opportunity now, you could use it for your marketing effort. Whether it's a positive, you start marketing the other side of the hotel, or the other services that individual did not mention or didn't go to see. Or if it's negative, you have to do, what are you planning to do so that, you're really responding to not only to that individual who wrote that comment, to another 100,000 people who's going to read your comment and see what you did different. Strongly suggest never respond where you're mad about the comments, whether good or bad, obviously, but really critical to take tremendous ownership in what do you want to do for this hotel and how far you want to take it. And you have to lead by example, obviously, but the buy-in from the rest of the team will give you tremendous energy to move forward.
Yeah, I'd love to drill into that a little bit, because I know, again, we chatted about it briefly, but as you think about treating every guest the same, I mean not to be devil's advocate, but that seems like it could be pretty time intensive, right? It could be difficult to do. So
Sure.
Are there ways, and Mark or David, maybe you can speak to this, as you think about, how do you, without playing favorites, how do you think about the kind of response that you would have to one guest versus another? Are there tools that you're using to help say, we've got to respond to everything,
Right.
but it might be a little different?
I think there's a couple of different schools of thought, and there's not necessarily a right or a wrong answer or school of thought. I think being engaged is key. For us, we do a couple of things in terms of how my perspective is not every review is created equal. And one of the things I really like about guest reviews on ihg.com is that if they are a loyalty member, it shows you their status.
Yep.
And I think for the same reasons that you offer perks and advantages to your most loyal guests, whether it be quick check-in or online first boarding on airlines. I mean, those are your best guests. So that feedback, not to say that other feedback is discounted, but that feedback needs to be listened to.
Well, and you also know they're a real guest.
And you know
right?
they're a real guest.
It's
Yes.
not
That's
some
true.
random
That's
person
true.
that may or
it's
may
a
not be
verified
real.
guest, which is comforting.
Yeah.
But I think if you look at loyalty members and you look at feedback a little bit at a higher level, you can pick up on themes within that subset of guests, and you can say, okay, how do we improve our get the guest experience for our IHG Rewards Club Platinum members, for example. That's one thing. And for another thing for us is when we look through the lens of, okay, we have these reviews, do we respond? We don't necessarily respond to every review. And again, this is just another school of thought that is not necessarily right or wrong, but we recognize that you're not only responding to that guest, but to future users and future shoppers on that channel. So, our perspective is if the review is specific enough that it warrants a response whereby we could respond and add value to future guests' experience, then we will respond. Some of them, I feel like are contributing to that online community, and they're not specific enough where we can only say thank you or sorry so many times and in so many different ways. So if we can be specific and relevant enough that our response can add value, that's sort of our filter.
Gotcha. Good
Though I agree with you somewhat, but I find out that even if it's a bad review, and you reach out to that individual and that guest, and you make an effort to make correction, I was so surprised that suddenly I'm looking back and that review is gone. Because this individual felt sincerely that you really care enough to reach out for them, whether via email or phone, and to talk about it, and not just bury it under the rug and move on, or put a nice fluff all over it and walk away from it. It really was surprisingly to see, and how many comments we get back, because my cell number is written all over the place, is how many feedback say, hey, you're great, thank you very much for your response. We are thrilled, we came back and we see the improvement you did, we promise you're going to do. I mean, with IC listening tool now, it becomes so easier to walk in there, quickly see every single day. I mean, literally, it's become a habit. Honestly, as a general manager, I always want it to be a habit. The first thing in the morning, I go check that, so I carry it on to the rest of the team. And now, obviously, with IC Listen Tool, it's become so easier to quickly get in, respond, and get out and take your comments with you to your stand-up meeting.
Yeah.
But it was awesome to see that. It really is.
That's great to hear.
The key, I think, is sincerity.
Yeah.
You know, and
Absolutely.
whether you're
I agree
responding
with
to
you.
everyone
I
or
agree
you're
with you.
responding to the ones that you think are specific enough to respond, good or bad. By the way. It's
Absolutely.
not
I
just
agree with you.
cherry-picked, but
I agree with you.
Is it needs to be an authentic response that is written to that person and addresses that review, as opposed to, sort of a general,
Cut and paste.
cookie cutter response.
Yeah, and I think it comes back to something Nabil said earlier as we think about ownership, right? Like that sincerity has to translate through not just the review response, but the ownership that your team takes to take whatever that feedback is and make the operational change or tweak or slight pivot of direction as a next step.
Yeah, I have to tell you though, a lot of time, you really, when you write it, you have to be able to read it. You have to be able to read it from a guest perspective. You have to. The sincerity is a major, major key. You're not just giving a brush stroke in an issue. Take ownership of it.
Yeah.
Fix it if it's a problem. Thank them if it's good. But they could read what your face impression and your response. They could read that quickly with the words and the wording you put in there. Really does.
Good stuff. All right, Mark, I wanted to pivot a little bit. I know we're in Vegas, lots of prognostication happening about what might happen tonight in the Red Sox game or otherwise. So I wondered if you would give us your sort of view into the future. What does social and social reputation management look like, a couple years from now? What kind of trends are you seeing that might be bubbling up that would be good for our audience to hear about?
Sure. As a former hotel owner who may have been subject to suspect reviews in the past, I'm really excited about this trend towards the verified review system. I think it helps when it comes to booking. Also, as a potential guest where I'm considering where I'm going to spend my money, verified reviews absolutely have more weight with where I am going to book, as opposed to anonymous comments online that could be rambling or the person might not have even have stayed there. The second trend, of course, is mobile. I hear it's the year of mobile.
It is. It's the year of mobile.
Finally, right?
The 40th year in a row. It's the year.
Unfortunately, because of its exponential growth, we really can't avoid talking about mobile. By 2017, 5 billion people will be on the mobile platform, and in the US alone, mobile bookings are expected to triple. So we want to obviously make sure we are maximizing our efforts around the mobile space.
Absolutely. And it's great to hear, and I feel like IHG is sort of positioned well there as well. We talked about verified reviews earlier and the importance that I think we believe that plays, and I think that's a great tool for us as we look for competitive advantage. And then, we've been mobile experts and leaders for some time with our mobile apps and our mobile web presence. So it's good to know that we're, again, sort of out there on the front foot rather than just responding.
I think the verified reviews from confirmed guests is really underrated.
Yeah.
I think that's something that needs to be more of a focal point in the communication to our guests, just in terms of what, again, we talk about, I have the privilege to work with the Owners Association on the Revenue Delivery Committee. So we're always talking about, direct web value proposition. Not only as owners and GMs, we know it's our lowest cost of sale, but that's something that I think adds to that value proposition. Is when you look there and you shop there and you read these reviews, you know that these folks stayed there because they were verified with a confirmation number, and you don't necessarily have that same comfort when you look at TripAdvisor reviews or other Yelp or whatever. So I just think it's underrated.
Yeah, and I think, I won't ask for a show of hands because it would probably be every hand in the house that would say, I've seen a review for my hotel on TripAdvisor that it was a little sketchy, or we thought it may not have been an actual guest. So I think you're right. From my perspective, it also adds, frankly, to the importance of responding to IHG guest reviews. If you know absolutely that is a guest who has been at your hotel and has had a stay experience with your hotel, there's no no question as to whether you should be managing your communications with them, because they've been there and they've had an experience, good or bad. So, all right, well, I know we're winding down a little bit. Would love to get some closing thoughts. We are in a social session, so I won't make you do it in 140 characters like a tweet, but maybe in 140 words or something like that. I'd love to hear from each of you just a parting thought in terms of what you would leave our audience with as they think about managing their online reputation and moving it from just cut and paste review responses to true operational change. So we'll go right to left. So Nabil, we'll start with you.
Sure. What we find out, I actually listen to obviously really help us tremendously. What we find out, the ease of the process when you go to IHG Listen Tool, and the quick you'll be able to glance through 6 or 7 sources of feedback. What we find out is, first, you really have to take ownership of the process itself. Second, you really have to have a buy-in from all the team around you and rally that team to be able to carry that hotel farther. So, third, it's great to have an incentive, but you could see the passion of those individuals, whether you have incentive or not, who created that synergy in the hotels. It paid tremendous dividend for us. And really, right now, I could tell you our MPI is over 100% in that market. And we definitely creeping up in the RGI to be very close to that. Is that all because of social media? No, but tremendously the feedback because of social media, how we responded, how I took the hotel to. It helped us to get where we are now.
Yeah, that's great stuff. Mark, yourself?
Sure. I would just add, for those of you who might be struggling with the online web space, or you don't know where to begin, or you feel frustrated, that transparency, honesty, and empathy wins every time. And if you start from there, you really can't go wrong.
That's great. David?
Oh, yes, well said. I would say a couple of things. One is, this idea of online reputation management and focusing on it is, if you put it in the context of guest feedback, whether it be Heartbeat or whatever, then you quickly realize that it shouldn't be optional. And if you don't care what your guests that are staying in their hotels every day are saying and what they think, then we have bigger problems to talk about. Maybe that's another panel. But so it's not optional. It's mission. I think it's mission critical. And I want to underscore what we talked about earlier, and Nabil just said around the sincerity of being engaged, and the same way that you would be sincere interpersonally across a front desk, that should show up in your online engagement. But this is something that is simple, but it's not easy. Yep. It's simple. People are talking about you. You need to listen, but it's not easy because there is an infinite, or feels like sometimes an infinite amount of information and feedback that you're trying to consume and act on with 24 hours in a day. So doing that in a way that is efficient but also authentic and sincere in each interaction is very important. So I think focus on sincerity and know that it's easy, simple, but it's not easy.
Awesome, good stuff. How about a hand for our panel today? Thank you. So again, just want to say thanks for coming to this workshop. I know you had a lot to choose from this afternoon, so thanks for being with us. Just wanted to leave you with 3 quick tips before we get out of here. The first is remember the IHG social listening tool. We've talked a lot about it today, but know that it's there for you. It is a simple, easy way to manage your online reputation, and always awesome as well that it's free, right? It's free to you, so it's a tool that you can use and you should make advantage of. And as we talked a lot about today, second of all, don't forget to turn operational insights into action. A lot of great examples from the panel today about how you can do that. We know it's going to mean different things for each of your hotels. Maybe you're not all going to have incentives. Maybe you won't all use emoticons. But there are lots of ways to get your staff rallied around the importance of social, and to not just think about responses, but to think about how we can drive operational change. And then lastly, know that we're here for you. If you've got questions about social, if you have questions about operations and how to sort of do some of this, we are here for you to answer those questions. There's an email address up on the screen, channels@ihg.com. That's your first point of contact. But know that we want to help you win. We want to help drive great hotels that guests love, and these are some tools and some insights that can help you do that. So the last thing I'll leave you with, we don't have socks coupons for you on the way out, but we do have a little parting gift for you on the way out, so be sure to grab that. Thanks again for joining. Enjoy the rest of your stay.